My fourth question is, where do you get your inspiration from? You started to mention in that last answer about Googling questions that people are asking. And I just came across this piece of content the other day. I think it was on an Instagram reel or somebody sent me a TikTok or whatever. But it was basically this woman showing her process for creating content
Mm,
and knowing what content people are looking for. And she'll
yeah.
just Google the topic, and then if you scroll down, you'll see like the top 5 questions that people are asking about that topic.
Mhm.
Then she just goes writes and releases content that answers that question,
Yeah.
that answers each one of those questions. And so it sounds like that's where you're going a little bit for inspiration too. Am I correct there?
Yeah, let me give you, and I'll do this in like 2 minutes. Let me give you very
Go.
tactical, practical things. One, go to Google, type in whatever your subject is. I'll pick mine, Ableton Live. Just look at the autocomplete stuff and you'll see what the autocomplete suggestions are for that.
Mhm.
Write that down. There's a tool called Answer the Public, I think. You can do a free trial. There's some kind of limited that gives you an expanded view of that and words and terms related. That's a really good starting place. That's a very practical tool. Related to that is YouTube, same thing. Like type in a search thing and then look at autocomplete and then look what pops up. What I found that's really beneficial to follow on the back end of that, like those are two tricks that I've used for a while and I've heard people do. But what makes it really beneficial is on the back end of that is go look at every single piece of content. Like I just did a video the other day that's a subject I have talked about till I've been blue in the face for the past 10 years. I know everything there's to know about that. But what I went and did is I found every video on YouTube that someone talked about a similar thing, including my own stuff. And I went, I looked at the comments and I went, okay, where
Hmm.
did I miss my last explanation of this? That 5 people said, but why do you do it this way? Blah, 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 blah. And then you write down those questions and then you start to build your outline off of that. So Google, YouTube, I mean, any social media stuff, look at content people have created, look at questions that people are asking because they missed it. I
Yep.
missed it when I did that video. That person missed it. Those are really big. The other thing that's amazing, people love talking about themselves. People love feeling in charge. So, not surveys necessarily, because survey feels very whatever, but on social media, um, what's one thing? This is a question I often use. What's one thing you wish Ableton Live did that it doesn't?
Mhm.
And put that in your context. And about 58% of people that answer that, maybe 70%, will say things that it already currently does.
It does. They just don't know how.
They just don't know how. So
Yeah.
then I go, okay, that's a place for content. As you know, again, asking people is a huge one. But I mean, if you just do those autocomplete searches, if you follow up and look at comments is a big one. If you
Mm.
ask people, and then the thing that Content Inc. that book I mentioned before, and I'm
Yeah.
pointing because it's behind me. Something that Joe mentioned in that book that I've never thought about that I did at the beginning of last year, before I headed into like creating lots of content, is he said, sit down and write every single question you think people would have about this topic. Ableton Live, how do I perform on stage with Ableton Live? Write down every possible question you can think of, and
Mhm.
then try as best as you can to go back to when you were starting and think of what's the entire process
Right.
from knowing nothing to there. And that's what I struggle with a lot, is like going back to those early days, campus
Yeah.
band, using tracks. Write that whole thing down. And if you do those 5 things or however many I mentioned, you'll never, ever, ever, ever run out of an idea.
You're
And
right.
and the bonus last piece is, as you release content, you got to watch it and you got to listen to comments and you got to see what people are saying, either about your presentation, about the content itself, the stories you're telling, how you're connecting. And if you do that, you'll never ever run out of ideas at all, ever
Yeah.
again.
You're absolutely right. I've been in this early phase of content ideation, and it's endless.
Yeah.
The amount of content that I'm just, it's ready for me to go answer these questions. It's ready for me to go create and release this stuff. It's definitely endless, and people are always, because people are always gonna be around as long as we're still here, right? Like
Yeah.
people are gonna be around, they're gonna continue to ask more and more questions. Someone's eventually going to ask a question that's never been asked before, or at least in a way that's never been asked before, and you're going to have to pose your answer slightly different than you have before, all these things.